Okay, well here's Al on the left and Chuck on the right. Talk about the canneries, the memories from yesteryear. Well, see, I'll ask the first question as why did you even have the cannery? And why was it built? And who built it? And
Well, it was during World War II. A lot of people were afraid that they were going to starve, and so they were encouraged to raise what was called victory gardens. And just about everybody in the small towns had a victory garden, and of course, with a garden, you have plenty of material, plenty of food, but you got to preserve it some way. And some ladies would can it and do very well with the glass cans, but jars, but a lot of them wouldn't, and it would spoil. And so I don't know exactly how it came about, but my father went around to different places and installed these custom canneries. The idea is that people would come in, bring their stuff, help can it, and then take it home with them. But he found out that didn't work too well. It was better to have your own staff at the cannery do the work, because a lot of people maybe mean well, but have a rough time performing when it comes to getting the stuff canned. So it was started with the idea that this would provide a service to the community. And they went down to Ottawa, Ohio, and looked at some of them down there, plus the experience Dad had with all his travelings around the state. And they came back with a couple small canners about this big. And I don't know how many cans it would hold, but it wasn't very many, just maybe 25 cans. And they ran it on propane. Propane's expensive to heat it, so they realized you were going to have to come up with a better way to heat these retorts. And so the next year they bought cookers, bigger ones, and got a boiler and used steam as a source of heating it up. So the reason they started was to satisfy a need in the community. By the time they left the business, the need was just about finished, because by that time personal freezers had come in, and a lot of people were just freezing their cans, freezing their merchandise from the garden, not having to work with cans.
We, in terms of building, we had a garage, and Dad started in the garage, I can remember, and then after a while, I then built the second building, which was larger, sort of the same kind of shape, but only wider and longer. And then after we canned there for a number of years, and I don't know how many, we built then a third building, so that we had much more room. And what I can remember as a kid, why that's the one we really used quite a bit, because we had a lot of, that's where the main canning then took place.
how old were you when your dad started the cannery? Do you think?
Well, I can't remember.
I don't think much older than 10 or 11, because we didn't do anything in the beginning phases of it. Mom and Dad did it all. And I think maybe they hired someone to help. But we were too small, because that stuff is hot. And when you're canning, it gets up to maybe 180, 200 degrees Fahrenheit, 12.5 pounds per square inch of pressure in those things. And you just can't have little kids in there that aren't know what they're doing. But gradually we worked. What normally happened is that customers would bring in their corn, and my mother was a receptionist, and she would take the corn and write down the book, give it a number, write down the name, write down what it was, and then any comments. For example, if they brought in a nice bushel basket with paper there to support or to the spacing between the corn and the basket, chances are it was going to be pretty good corn, because they knew what they were doing. But if somebody brought in an old feed sack, corn that had already been, the husk had been taken off, that's the only way we took it. If they didn't do that, then they got to sit on a tree out there and do it and bring it in. She'd pull out of there and have them smell it. She said, this isn't going to really work out too well. She tried to be honest with the customer, let them know what it was going to be like before we actually canned it, because they could always maybe go back and get some more and do it right. So that was her job, was to check these people in, make any comments that she felt that might harm the taste of the corn. It's, put it in feed sacks. Anyways, then it would be given a number. And my job was to cut the corn on a corn cutter. So lay it on this trough, he would go through and the knives would cut it off. He'd have two dishpans. One was a whole kernel, one was a cream style. The cob went out the end onto a trailer or a truck. And then from there, take the good whole wheat, whole kernel corn, and take it over to the table where the lady would fill up the can, not too tight, not too full, because if you get too full, it'll spoil. But she'd fill it up, put it on trays. These trays would fit into what was called exhaust boxes that Dad invented so that the steam could heat these things up. And then he put the water in, take it over to the exhaust box, and put a thermometer in when it got up to 190 or in that abouts. Then he would pull it out and check the can in the front, because that would be the coldest one. So if you don't get it hot enough to drive out all the air, it's going to spoil. And then Al, well, he had a big, dirty job, not dirty, but a big job, because these cans were now hot, very hot. Dad had put it on the sealer, and what that did was the can would go through, and then a lid would come down, and then on the sealer there'd be a roller that would keep working itself in until that can was sealed perfectly tight. And then he would know the number on the can, and he'd have to stamp it. He'd have to catch it with his gloves because they were hot. He'd have to put it in these containers. When the container got filled, he had to stick it in the retort, keep going. And he was the only person allowed to not have to wear a shirt. Everybody else had to wear a shirt, so he could show off his tan.
I think you'd have to wear a shirt in case you burned yourself. It
Oh,
was
I was
probably pretty
careful.
hot.
Sweating so much, working so hard. I can remember you were mentioning about Mom, checking in things, and of course we did too, which was a good experience. But I remember someone bringing in corn in a box that had soap in it, and she let them know that the soap taste would come through the corn because it's got milk in it and pick it up. So, and of course, we wanted to be sure we had a satisfied customer. So, and from experience, we knew, and she knew. So, those are some of the things that happened.
And Dad would back her up, because if any customer started to give her a rough time, he comes zipping right out there. Go on, I don't want your business, just leave. He didn't take any guff from customers, because they didn't know what they're talking about. Mom did, and he wasn't going to let her be disgraced or whatever.
I remember this wasn't part of the cannery, but we were working in the cannery, and I don't know how old we were, and you may not remember this, but I do. Someone came in and was there in the cannery, and he saw the apples in her neighbors, and we had a fence there, but a gate that we could walk through. And they asked me, I remember asking me to go over and get some apples for him. And Dad heard about it, and man, he really was mad at the guy. I don't know, you remember that?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how old I was, but yeah, Dad did put up with any cheat or anything like that. Well, I was mentioning to Jane when we were coming back from the reunion about cutting corn, and then we would feed the cobs to the pigs, and the cream corn, we could use that to feed it to the pigs too, so that was helpful.
Yeah.
And the way we kept track of the numbers, because we wanted to be sure when you brought your bushel of corn in, or 5 bushels of corn, that you got your corn that you brought in. And so we watched the numbers, and Chuck, once Mom put them on the basket, there would be tags, then Chuck would be sure to see that number got in the can, or in the dish that had the old corn, so the gals then could get the number in, and as we moved it through, and then I could put the right number on it after we sealed them. But that was, we took pride in giving everybody their own produce.
When would you stamp the number on it? When it would cool down, or when it was hot?
As soon as it came out, I had a stamper that I would stamp. The reason for that is we might, in one tray, which I think was 36.
36.
I think 36 in a tray. Why, there might be 24 of 901, and then another 12 of 902 corn, because we would go in numerical order. So that way then when we would pressure cooker in the big cooker, and then we'd take it out and dry it or cool it, and then we would sort them out so we could figure out how many they had, and then recorded in her book, when Mom had registered them, and then we put them in the container, back in the container. So we had to stamp them each time.
Yeah.
And if for some reason it didn't go on, real good, well, I would take alcohol and usually had a little to clean it off and then restamp it. So I mean, while it was still hot in the cooler, or in the tray we had one boiler that held, I think, 300, or what do we call those?
Pressure cooker, I think we call it, or
One
retard.
One of them held 300 cans, as I remember. There were 3 trays, huge trays, 2 deck, that we used with a hoist in the back. The others were smaller, and I think those held about 100. We had,
Yeah, 24 plus 6 on top,
yeah.
or 4 on top.
And so if we had, let's say we did some beans, they were pressure cookered a different amount of time than corn. Usually if we were really busy with corn, why then we could, I can't remember how many we would can in a day, but we would fill that up, I imagine, the big one up a couple times. We had 3 in the cooker, in the pressure cooker, and then we'd have 3 others that we could then fill up. I can't remember how long
Well, corn was 50, 60 minutes, beans are 20 minutes. It's quite a variance in different things.
yeah.
So we try to do all the corn. Meanwhile, the beans and that first together, and then corn, then just keep going corn until we ran out of corn. And then anybody else had brought in beans or peas or carrots or whatever we can, those for them. But it was quite a job for Al had wrestling these big, I mean, they held 100 cans, and they were pretty heavy just to start with. And then once the thing is cooked for 60 minutes at 212 degrees at 12.5 pounds per square inch, you took it out and you had to stop the cooking. So then you had a water trough-like thing over here. Put it in the water to stop the cooking on it.
Big tank.
Big tank.
Would get hot. It'd get pretty hot back there.
Yeah, I do a lot of good.
In fact, I think there's sometimes we'd even get some ice, I remember.
Yeah.
Sometimes, just because we had to cool the water down enough so it would stop the cooking.
And then when it was done, cooling, then you'd take it out and sort it. You'd sort it so you'd have 4 on the bottom, then 3, then 2, then 1. So that was 10. So if you had 4 rows and 4 down here, just 4, then you could easily count it 44 and write that in the book. Because we had to use those containers again because the corn just kept coming through, and Dad was very good at keeping an eye on things, and of course Al was too, because you had to watch the temperature on the retard or on the pressure cooker, and also the pounds per square inch to make sure that it was right where it should be, so you didn't goof up on the processing of the corn. And then when I cut it, the whole kernel would be, then the second dish pan is where the cob was scraped. And that was real good, like Al said, for chicken feed. And some people come and get it, just take it off our hands to feed to their chickens or to feed to their pigs. Or you could make corn fritters out of it, because it was a scraping of the ears. But it was very slow in cooking, so we discouraged people from getting cream-style corn. We try to get them to take whole kernel corn. The great majority did.
Well, people pay for their corn or their produce before or after?
After, because they didn't know how many cans they get. Usually a bushel you get, maybe these are just 20-ounce cans, you get maybe 13, 14. But you don't know that for sure. So we can't count them, stick them in their container, write it in the book, and then when they come in, Mom would have in the back of the book, 1 can is so much, 2 cans is so much, and 3 cans, so you have to do multiplying. You just flip to the back.
I think it was about a dime a can, wasn't it?
Well, it varied. It started out 6 cents a can, it went up, then probably a dime, yeah.
What else did you can? Did you do fruit also?
Well, peaches was the big thing as far as, the corn, beans, you put salt in the can. But with peaches, you wouldn't want to do that, you'd put sugar in. So depending on how much sugar you put in, is how much a syrup it was going to be. So you could have it light, or no, for a diabetics, no sugar, and light, and medium, and heavy, then super heavy or whatever. I don't remember exactly how much it was. We poured in the can. That was all put in before you put in the product, like the corn. You'd stick a 60 grain piece of salt in, and then whoever was packing the cans would go in on top of that, then add the water, then over to the exhaust box.
Did people bring in their own peaches or?
No, we didn't. Well, you know how it is sometimes. If it's a real good friend, you might take them if you're not busy. But no, we discourage them from doing that, because the ones we bought from Engelbeck up in Michigan were far superior to what anybody else had. Because we wait till towards the end of the season when they're the ripest.
Where in Michigan?
His name was Engelbeck. It was on Route 105. Can't think of the name of the town right now.
Oh.
He'd bring down, not a big truck, a little truckload of stuff.
Port Clinton.
Port Clinton, in that area.
Yeah. But they were tree ripened peaches. And I can remember Mom and Dad talking about, you know, if you want to get your peaches canned, you bring them in. On the top, they would be ripe, and then below, they wouldn't be as ripe, and the bottom, they were green as grass. And we'd be stuck with trying to get those things canned, and we didn't want to can them unless they were ripe. And so after that, why then Dad, Mom decided to we would get the peaches and then take your order for a case. We'd take any, and then you'd say what kind of syrup you wanted, as Chuck said. That then also kept us, we didn't sell them, we canned them for you, so we didn't have to put a label on them. Because if we would have taken peaches and canned them and called them Snyder's peaches, then we'd had to make labels, we'd had labels, but we'd also have to go through a lot of inspection and some other stuff that I didn't understand at the time, but I know that was one of the reasons why we didn't do it.
Mhm.
And what, was it 1959 they sold it?
Yeah.
And moved over to the farm?
Moved to the farm.
Yeah.
Tom Good bought it. He ran the cannery for the rest of that year. I stayed around a little bit to kind of, help him, but I could see it wasn't going to be too good, because you got to keep your people busy, If you're out of this, then you shift over to this. And if you're out of this, you don't let people just stand around and talk. So, and Paul said he helped him out too. I don't remember that, but that's what Paul says, so he probably did. But then he also had worked in the greenhouse, so he did the greenhouse, I think, for 2 years, and I think he sold the greenhouse to one of the Kreider boys, and they took it apart and took it out to their place.
Mm.
And then the buildings now where Tom lives, have all been, I don't know if they burned them or just pushed them over and hauled the stuff away or what, but that's all gone. And he made a real nice 2-car garage with a place to sit inside, like sometimes he has his family reunion at his home. And so this is big enough to seat a number of people in case it rains. So it's no longer there.
One of the things that I didn't really appreciate while we were doing it, but as you think about it afterwards, Dad was very organized and a good manager and a good thinker. Because he would, he would think ahead about what we were to do and what the problem was, and then correct it, so we didn't have that problem the second time. I mean, just as you could kind of follow, at least had some idea of how we did the canning. I mean, it was very organized, and Dad was good with people. And of course, he had 3 fine sons to help
Yeah.
him and Mom, but it was a good family experience. I remember the just having to think, the cans came from Continental Can, and we'd get a truckload of them, and they were in a I was going to say a sack, but it was sack material, like paper sack material, and it would be this about this square, and I don't know how many were in one of those.
I'm not sure.
But we would get cans that we'd use for corn, which had the enamel, and cans for tomatoes was plain. And so if we were doing tomatoes, one of us would bring down one of these, can't remember, we called them something, but we would set them down, just take the top off, and then we would put the salt in, as Chuck was mentioning. And there was smaller salt for the
30 grain salt for tomatoes.
For tomatoes, and so we just drop those salt. We drop those in, and then the cans would be ready. And we would set them up then for the ladies to do whatever, in the same way with the corn. And
Didn't have to wash or sterilize the cans
No,
first?
no, they were
No.
already clean.
I don't do that when they get inside the exhaust box. We washed the tomatoes. Or we didn't wash the corn, but it would, we very seldom ever lost a can. I can remember it once or twice whenever a can blew up. If the steel wasn't right, and that wasn't our fault necessarily, why?
We leaked.
It'd just blow up.
Once in a while.
A few days later,
Yeah, not much.
and it'd stink, it was bad.
Well, the tomatoes, were they dipped in hot water? Were you?
Not hot water, it was cold. Well, no, it was
Steamed.
cold water in the
No.
sink.
Oh, they were steamed to
They
to
put 'em
peel
through a
them
steamer.
before you,
Well, that was the,
To
yeah,
get-
after we wash them.
yeah, to peel them.
You
Yeah.
steamed them and then they came out and the ladies
Then-
peeled them. I remember watching them do
Yeah,
that.
the
Sorry,
skin
we
would
washed
come
it.
off.
Never washed them.
So if I had tomatoes, I just have to bring them in. I wouldn't really have to prep them.
No.
No.
Do you have to prep beans? Do you have to cap all your beans?
Well, yeah, they usually cut them about, they recommend about an inch long to cut them. Wouldn't have to, they could leave them long, like Smith's Cafeteria in Toledo, they want theirs long for the restaurant, but mostly it was, they'd cut them up. But we would wash them, we'd probably put them up through about 3 washes.
How
Yeah.
many people work for you?
Yeah, we usually had maybe about 2 or 3 extra besides the boys.
Heavy for sure.
But when we
Labor.
went 24 hours a day, then we had a whole new crew. See, we went, during the war, we were going hot and heavy. You hear that old sealer go? We had, the first sealer we had was you you had to get your can over here, your lid, put your lid on it, and then you use your foot and put it down, and then keep it down, and it would seal, then you take it out, and move it over there for Al to stamp it, and you just keep doing that. Well, this thing had a rod on the back. This was, and Al was small, like that tripod. And he got his hands, the machine was, wasn't grounded right. So he got his hands on that rod, he couldn't let go. My dad just went over and,
I remember that.
you remember that? I think you
I
were.
was not very old then.
No, you weren't, you were very small.
Yeah, I don't know if I was Emma's age or Max's age or what, I don't know.
I'd say
But I do
Max.
remember.
I just couldn't let go of that.
And I was trying to think how, because you were talking about that. Yeah.
I mean, got electrocuted then.
Well, the electric went through me, but it didn't bother. I mean, it didn't kill me, obviously.
That's good.
So,
Wow. That would
You
be
and I
scary.
would be here.
It would
Oh, yeah.
be, it would be wet, everything was wet, I imagine, and so forth, so it was a good protector, but it was, well, you have, I'm sure, or at least I have felt, you feel something, you can feel there's a juice there. I think that's what it was.
But
But
you
it-
couldn't let go.
But by this, it contracted the muscles, so I couldn't let loose.
That would have
To
been
go
scary.
along with what Al said on the canning and Dad inventing things, he invented a box about that wide that had a chain through it that would, so that the can, here's a can, this thing would keep the can moving. So you put the can cold this end, and you go all the way to the end of this thing, which had steam in it to warm it up, and you take it off the other end and can it. That's what's supposed to happen. Didn't work. The reason was that some corn is very heavy, and other corn is light. So the temperature wasn't right to seal it always when you got to the other end. So that was he just did that. But he'd make things like the exhaust box. He made those, and they were well done. And then with his thermometer, he'd always know, or whoever was running it. Sometimes I'd do it, sometimes Al do it, but mostly Dad was that kind of that department.
What was Paul's job? Did he?
Well, his job was to stay out of the cannery. They couldn't keep him out. Couldn't keep him out. Then as he got older, he would, I'm not sure. I think probably what you were doing, I don't know for sure. Because I'm not sure who they had cut corn when I went to college. But he could, he's pretty smart, Paul is, and he can, all these little jobs, he just enjoys doing this kind of stuff. And he and Dad worked together quite a bit after we both went to college on the farm. different things. But I can't think of a specific job that guy did. Well, maybe when he was like I ran the corn cutter, or years ago out the end. Now, somebody's got to take those ears, the trailer out back, and put it where the pigs are or the strawberry patch is. So if you're learning to drive, it's a great experience because you can drive around that property and nobody's going to find you. Go out there, and then you got to back it up. So you're going to learn to back a trailer. So he probably did that some of the time. Or get stuck. Once in a while we get stuck out there. And the corn cobs are really, slippery.
Usually we do that after they're all done. Well, not all done, but I mean, we're waiting on some pressure cookers to get down or something like that. But again, depending on how big the day was.
Yeah, usually I would do that because I'd get ahead and I could have the time to go do it and get back so I could
That's right.
pick it up where I left off.
I don't remember how, some of the big days when we would really be busy with corn, which I think would be about this time of year,
Yeah,
because the corn is ripe and everybody's got corn in
yeah,
the
it
can.
was a good time.
But we would,
It was in the thousands. I don't know if it's 2,000 or 3,000, but it was for a little operation like we had.
we were efficient.
And every once in a while I put those corn cobs on the tray and out jump a mouse. So you never knew for sure.
Didn't can any mice, did you?
Not that I know of. We did can popcorn, and Al mentioned the labels. We had a label
Oh,
called Pop's
yes.
Popcorn.
Yeah.
Pop's Popcorn, and we sold that.
It wasn't the biggest hit.
No, I don't think we had
We
one a
weren't
year.
too, we weren't too good on our TV commercials. I guess. That's the problem.
Well, speaking of TV, tell us about your strawberry patch.
Strawberry patch, about a half acre roughly. And, we would pick strawberries normally from 8 in the morning to noon. And then if a guy came by, like a guy did come by from a grocery store, he said, he sees these kids, Al and I out there, what do they know? They're probably screwing everything up. So he buys 1 quart, turns it upside down. He finds out that the strawberries at the top, the strawberries at the bottom are completely the same. So then he buys a lot of strawberries from us. And just realized these guys are pretty good. Anyway, Dad said, well, I'll tell you guys, I'll give you 10 cents a quart for every quart you pick, or at the end of the season we'll buy a television set. Which way you want to go? So we voted for TV. 10-inch screen, not that big, wasn't very big.
And how old were you then?
I'm too old.
I know.
I bet you weren't, I don't know, 9 or 10 probably, because TVs weren't available
Yeah, this was in the 50s.
for the public before that. I was 16 when we got our first TV, so.
Well, I don't remember. I do remember though, we would
Did you?
cook the Fran and
Yeah,
Ollie,
they were on.
and of course the test battery, you kind of kept an eye on him too.
Well, this guy, I can't do it. He stays up late at night, and he wanted to watch.
Red Skeleton.
Yeah, but there was another little gal you wanted to watch. Her name was Dagmar.
Oh,
You remember Dagmar?
Oh, yeah.
She had a low cut evening gown type.
All right.
But the cannery, one thing it did teach us is you're not done until you're, as Yogi Berra would say, until you're done. Because the help would normally go home at 5 o'clock, 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 they were. But maybe we still had all these cans to sort in groups of 10, and all these cans to put back in containers. And we may not be done sometimes till 9 o'clock at night. Next day you get up. Here we go again. So we learned that it's not finished till all the parts are put together.
Now, did you guys get paid, or just? Was
Yeah,
that a
well, I
family?
did. I earned $1 an hour. I was able to graduate from college not owing anybody anything. I thought that's pretty good.
Mhm.
They can't do it today too well because it's so expensive. But, yeah. And I saved it, and well, then also my grandfather, aunts, and my mother, her dad had set up a $500 not a scholarship, but like a bond or something. That we could cash that when we became 21 and use it for whatever. And you got one, didn't you get one too? I hope so.
No, I don't even remember.
Well, I
I
remember.
imagine I don't remember. Yeah.
But yeah, we were paid.
Yeah, I can't remember. Well, I do remember, I was mentioning Jane coming home, one of my first big jobs was to keep an eye on the boiler. And I think I got about $5 a day or something.
Oh, did you?
But, and that was the one that was outside,
Oh, okay.
not the one in the shop. But I can remember, keeping an eye on that, keep the water pressure, so there's enough water in it, not gonna let it get too hot. And I don't know how old I was then either, but that was an early job.
Yeah, I did that too.
You-
Only one day, I don't know what happened, it got too hot. We showed Dad, and then we're out there pulling the fire out of the boiler and everything. Next thing I know, Leonard, remember? Dad's brother, Leonard, came out of the Navy, and he fired the boiler. He'd done that on the battleship, or not a battleship, but on a troop carrier. And he fired it, boy, he knew what he was doing. He had stacks of wood everywhere around the side there where the boiler was, and he kept it right where it should be. Boy, that scared me, because, you don't want the boiler to blow up, and he didn't mean to do something, but I sure did something wrong. That's when we were smoking corn soap. I had a little copper tube, put the corn soap, the dark stuff inside there, and stick it there by the boiler. Got tape around to one end. Take a puff if you needed to.
Shit.
Yeah.
I wrapped it in old newspaper.
Yeah, that was another way to do it.
Yeah, it didn't last long,
I think it lasted until Mom said when she was young she smoked coffee. Oh, okay, Mom, but we're smoking this other stuff. And long after that, I think we were told, quit.
but it wasn't.
But it was great, learning responsibility. Dad would comment every once in a while after it was all over, I wonder if I worked you boys a little too hard. I don't think so. I don't think it disturbed us too much. But we did work because we had the greenhouse in the spring, the farm in the summer, and the cannery in the summer and fall. And basketball for Al. Al's a great basketball player.
Well, they would let us, and we would go play ball.
Yeah, baseball. Oh yeah, I got to play baseball.
Yeah. So we played
What about your lawn mowing business?
Oh, yes. That
Well,
that
one
was
more
quite an
business.
enterprise, wasn't it?
Well, I think we were 10 and 12, but I'm not sure on
Yeah, I
that.
don't remember really.
But this guy over at Molina, about 7 miles away from where we lived, had built a lawnmower. This was before Stora sold them. He had built this and had a Briggs and Stratton motor on it. And we were interested in lawnmower, so Dad took us over because Dad knew this guy pretty well. $150. Can you imagine that back in 1948 or somewhere like that? That was a lot of money. So Mom would take us, we'd try to get our lawns fairly close together downtown McClure. And that way we could go from one to the other without having to call it rough, because we didn't drive and somebody had to come and get us. And so we did. We had a good business going. And this next year, well, I think it was in July that we paid that thing off, that $150. Every week we used money to pay the note off, promissory note. And I think it was by then. So then the next year we bought another one, another mower, and hired a guy to do the trimming. Then we had a lot more business. And I think that was about the end of it. I don't know whether we just had 2 years or 3 years, but it was.
I think at one time we had 22 lawns, as I remember.
Yeah, we had a bunch of them. And the people, a lot of them done on Saturday, so it looked nice for Sunday. And this one had a belt that went around the outside. If the grass was wet, this thing eventually would start to slip, and you couldn't get. And so we tried to break them up a little bit. But it was good.
How much did you charge a lawn, do you remember?
Well, yeah, the dollar, I'd say from $1 to $2. Some of them out in the country are pretty big. But the typical, I think, was about $1.25. I don't know, it may have been somewhat cheaper than that, but I don't know. I don't think cheaper than $1.
seemed like we tried to put $10 in the can each week.
Yeah.
For the.
Yeah, we did.
Well,
I got that receipt at home.
Oh, do you?
Promissory note, yeah. Yeah, we had it paid off by July. Amazing. And sometimes well, that was maybe once. Take the wagon, hook the wagon up to the lawnmower, and take off from home to the neighbors, sit in the wagon and go down the street. That wasn't too smart. It's kind of dangerous.
Just a little bit.
But I remember Dad said about the first one we cut, he said, well, you're going to trim, aren't you? How do you thought about trimming? Yeah, we'll trim that. So we had these old sheep shears. And it made a difference. People like that. They like the other lawn around the trees and things trimmed.
Didn't have your electric trimmer like today.
Do you remember the time we cut Love's lawn and it was real wet? And she wanted it mowed even though it was real wet, or she or.
Yeah, I think so.
And then they came out and tried to chew us out of it.
Was that the lady on the corner? Was it the corner?
I-
Was that the love or was it back away?
One of them there in town.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I know.
You remember?
I remember getting chewed out.
And I mean, they wanted the lawn mowed, but when it's wet, which we knew, we said it's going to track, and because you know, to put the grass down, and when you mow over it, well, I won't cut it. And so
We were
I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know what did happen.
I don't know. They probably made us.
Yeah. One thing about the greenhouse we didn't mention that I remember is we, in addition to selling the flats of tomatoes and so forth to some of the operators, we also would sell, if you wanted some petunias or you wanted some cabbage or whatever, well then we would sell them by the dozen. And we had a bunch of newspaper and we'd wrap it up and sell that. They're out of the garage, as I remember. I think we had
Yeah.
a table and stuff.
Yeah.
But that was a way to work with customers.
I think
And we'd always
gave
give 13. I think,
13,
was-
yeah. Gave 13.
13 each
for a dozen.
time and all that stuff. And, you know, well, it was, again, another experience of working and giving service to people. It was fun.
Yeah. I can remember when I ran the corn cutter and I could look around. So I said, oh, there's Connie Gady in her shorts and her nice tan. I'm sure she's going to need some help. And Al was kind of back in the corner, but he couldn't really get a good view of our customers. So I raised her, Mom, I think she needs some help, Mom. Okay. The same thing with the plants in the greenhouse. You know, they'd come and carry the plants out for them.
What about watermelon? Was that when you sold watermelon?
No,
That was different.
that was when I was teaching
Oh,
in
okay.
Edgerton. We had our FFA had a watermelon stand at the homecoming. So we had a tent, a table, several tables. We worked with one of the guys that had a locker. We showed you a locker at Glass Guy, where we'd have meat or Myers folks with. So we have a locker that we would keep it wouldn't be frozen, but they would keep the watermelons cold for us.
Cool.
And we'd bargain someplace for maybe 50 or 60 watermelons. We figured we could sell that many. And then we had a tub, and we had some ice in it, or a tank, and then we had a lot of paper plates, and knives, and so forth. Cut them out in 8 pieces.
They were long, thin watermelons rather than
Yeah.
round ones we mostly get now.
So we'd cut it in the middle and slice it 1 and 2, and let's see, that would be 4, and then we'd have 4 on the other side.
And then he would
Charge-
bring all these towels and dishcloths home
and
to wash, and so they were just so stained, so I'd soak them in Clorox in the sink, and then wash them. And so to this day, he does not like the smell of Clorox.
Or
Oh,
watermelon.
Or watermelon.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we made quite a bit of money. But it got, well, we would have, it was a thing that might start on Thursday and then go to Saturday night. Usually Saturday night was a big night. It would be warm, end of July, that time.
Be hot outside, and watermelon tasted real good.
And if the weather was nice, we'd sell a lot of watermelon.
Then there was a car smash. Was it 1 year?
Yeah, and I didn't get involved in that one.
Oh, didn't you? Oh,
I don't, well, what was it, yeah,
I thought they used sledgehammers to hit the glass in the cars, and you charge them so much a swing or
well, I don't think we did that.
You didn't do that,
That
okay.
would sound like something I would, wouldn't, I don't think I'd get into that one.
Okay.
Liability.
I thought it was in the same area.
No,
As a water
well, it
house.
might, yeah, there might be some,
Someone else may
Doing
have
it,
had a
but-
booth, yeah.
yeah,
I think it was the firemen sponsored this too, or something. I don't know,
Oh.
it was a firemen's convention or something.
yeah, I don't remember. A lot of fun. Very fortunate, I've said it to a number of people, and say it now, very fortunate to have parents I had to learn all this stuff and have the experiences. And
Yep, they were good, real good.
loving and very helpful, and I think too, I've always thought Dad and Mom wanted to have us do some stuff so we could learn things, and he liked his independence too. That was another reason I think the cannery, why he got started in cannery, because he was teaching for a while. So,
Yeah, he taught 13 years, then he had to decide, am I gonna keep teaching or run the cannery? And the cannery was getting bigger and bigger. He went with the cannery. I don't know if he missed teaching that much or not. I know that Hub Hauser ran into him last year or the year before. He was in Dad's class. I just kind of wondered, discipline-wise, how tough was Dad? Hub said, well, this one kid back there, he was kind of falling asleep. And Dad would go back and wake him up. And says, you know, I got some things here I think you should want to know. I guess he finally just, wow, decided to give up on the kid. But Dad never seemed that way. He never seemed, I think the maddest I seen him get was when he was walking in the house at the cannery, the house. And you and I thought maybe he'd play ball with us, and he was tired and he didn't want to play ball, so I tossed the ball to him and he just took it and threw it way out there in the garden. I think he got the message, Dad.
And you said your grandfather was a pharmacist?
Yeah.
Did he have
In Bloomdale,
Pharmacy,
Ohio.
or-
Yeah, in Bloomdale, Ohio. That's where he had his pharmacy. I guess that was the thing in those days, that the head of the house or family, the patriarch, he could call the kids home because he wanted them closer and they'd have to come, or they did come. And he, you know, he was a good pharmacist, but he wasn't a very good farmer. He got a kick out of, he gave Al and I each a nickel in Evansport. This is when Evansport was a bigger town. So we went down to the hardware and each of us bought a nickel's worth of nails. He thought that was the greatest thing. Wouldn't spend it on candy, we'd spend it on nails.
To build some.
to build some?
Well, I imagine you got a pretty big sack full of nails too for a nickel.
Probably.
yeah,
Well, I remember your mom would be totally exhausted during that canning season.
Oh, it was hard work,
I mean,
especially for her.
When I was, you know,
Oh,
at the
yeah.
very tail end of it coming on the scene, I mean, she was just exhausted. And she had a lady that helped in the house, and the house over there at McClure was very modest. I mean, it wasn't anything fancy to live in, and took a lot of work. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it cost $1,000.
The house?
Is that right?
I remember you could hear the mice run in the wood. And they had taken metal, just the strips of like sheet iron, and just tacked over these holes so the mice couldn't get out. And one night, I was scared. I thought those mice are going to get up in bed with me because I could hear them run. I went down. Dad says, "No." So he came upstairs. He says, "You see how smooth this bed stand is, or whatever you call it, around the end of the bed? They can't come up here." Oh, okay.
oh, dear.
Took care of that.
The bed
But
boards.
you probably heard a few mice once in a while. Yeah.
straw.
Yeah, around the outside, perforate.
Kind of helped.
Burr. Oh, burr.
I left that window up upstairs. It put a snow on there in the morning inside the room.
Oh, I think at least that much.
Right.
But they survived. Heck, it was. I remember Evie Pfizer was sick. Wasn't feeling good, and you had gotten a doctor's kit for Christmas or something. So you went over to Evie's as a doctor, Dr. Snyder. He's going to help you, Evie. She got such a kick out of that. She felt better.
Humor probably made her laugh.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
The whole amazing thing to me was that your mom grew up in Columbus, Ohio, in white civilization. And then she comes out there to the boonies and, you know, sticks with it. That was the amazing thing to me over all those years.
When she first came to town, she went down to the post office. Just looked at her. Nobody said a word. Just looked at her. She felt so alone.
I can imagine.
Yeah, McClure was quite a bunch.
But your mother always enjoyed setting a pretty table and
She
as
did.
hard as
She
she
liked
worked.
that.
And,
Right.
Her
a
mother,
lot of pride in,
I think
Get
her
the
mother
linens
probably-
on
Yeah.
and polish the silverware and
yeah.
Every Sunday was at the house. Was
crystal glasses.
nice.
And,
She had everything fixed up.
and now I just store them in the cupboard and never get them out. We have paper plates on the picnic table.
That's what you're supposed to have on a picnic table.
Well, we'd have a minister
Yeah, a lot of times.
come for Sunday dinner. Would be FHB,
It's been
family hold back, occasion.
I remember Grandpa Snyder was there. I was a bishop or somebody high up in the Methodist church. And invited him over for dinner. And I had a little, these ball things at the end of the paddle. I had the ball thing. I don't know why I did it, but I just had to bounce it on the floor and that thing went right in the cream.
Oh, no.
Who did that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Well, thank you for chatting, sharing memories.
we got more tape left.